so I'm not going to pause on this slide, but essentially what we're going to be covering today is how you find the perfect image for your business, sources of free and paid for images, how to check for copyright, how to credit correctly, and more importantly, how not to find images. So don't get caught out. Like I said, if you've got any examples or any images that you are looking to source for your particular business, drop them in the chat and we'll have a look at this a bit later on. So if I was to ask any business owner a question, if there was one thing that you could do to change on your website or your business marketing assets that would make your business appear more credible and professional, that required no formal training or technical skill and was completely free, would you want to do that one thing? The answer would inevitably be yes. If you could improve the overall look of your business with really good images that you can source that are completely free, why wouldn't you do it? So why are good quality images so important for your brand and for your business? There's many reasons. It's far more than just using pretty images. If it's done correctly, it can go a long way to increase the value of your business. It will give your business personality, and it will create trust and recognition. And it can even, on some occasions, provide direction and motivation for employers. So I've pulled up a few websites here that I'm just going to quickly whiz through, just to demonstrate how glossy and nice the images are and the impression that it gives you of that particular business. So the first one is a well-known whiskey brand, and you can see, you know, they've spent a great deal of time ensuring that they've got a really good standout image, hero image on their website. You know, all their branding is very strong. It's carried through in all their packaging, but they've got one really good image at the top of their website. The second thing to note about this company as well is that obviously they're selling products, which I'm sure many of you are as well. They photograph everything in exactly the same way, in the same format. And it's quite important when you're listing products, you're selling on an e-commerce website, that everything is shot in a really uniform manner. And this is a really good example of a company that does this well. Obviously, they've got all their good call to actions in the key areas. But yeah, it's just a prime example of what works. And again, you know, their branding is really strong. They've carried the colours all the way through. A good example. Another one I wanted to show you is Courvoisier Brandy. Again, beautifully shot, really well lit. They've chosen to cut this image out and place it on their coloured their branded background. But you can just tell by the way that it's shot, it's a very rich, sumptuous looking brand. And again, you know, even in the images that they're using to demonstrate the story of the business, they're all beautifully shot and beautifully arranged. Another good example is Patax. We're all familiar with this brand, I'm sure. And again, you know, all their product shots are shot in the same format. They're all shot from above. And we'll talk about this a bit later when we talk about, you know, if you're going to attempt to take photos yourself. But again, really strong branding. In this case, the images play probably a second role behind their brand. You know, obviously the colouring is very important on here. And they've chosen to use quite small images, but they've still got that good hero image at the top of their website, which draws you in. Okay. And the final one is Hovis. Again, beautifully shot images. There's a bit of history in there, products, and they even give you recipes. But again, very strong imagery, beautifully lit. You know, they're telling a story by using a family-friendly picture. You know, even the sustainable side of things, you know, they've used a very strong, powerful image. So imagery can be really important for the use on your website, and it's a really strong consideration. I've pulled up this one because I just wanted to show you how strong this brand is and the different ways in which they shoot their actual images. So if we go to the, basically, if you look at pictures of tractors, they're not the most exciting things to look at, but they've shot them in a particular way that makes them look and appear really strong and really mighty and powerful machines. They've come down slightly and they've shot up so that it looks quite impressive. They've done an angled shot here of it actually being used. But their product shots, as you'll see on their website, are all shot in the same way. I'm not very clearly demonstrating this on the website, am I? Hang on, let me just go to agriculture. You'll see they're all shot, they're beautiful, they're very sort of colourful. They've used, obviously yellow is very big part of their branding, but they're all shot with people in them, and we'll talk about people pictures a bit later. Rather than just having an image shot with nobody sat on it in a white background, they've put it in place to better sell that product. So we talked a little bit about branding. Branding is really important when you're thinking about the types of images that you should be using on your website, because you want to be able to tell a story. It's that first impression that people will get of your business when they land on your site. Or when they see your product. So it needs to promote recognition. You need to create trust and credibility. Give it like a unique quality. You want it to be branded to you. It's important that you're recognizable as a business. And as I said, you know, it can provide direction and motivation. And obviously the end result is that you want it to generate referrals and sales. So you want your images to be the best that they can be. Okay. So why are good images good for your website and your social media presence? So we've talked about the brand. A strong image will improve the appearance of your website. It will make you look professional, and that's what you want to come across. It will evoke the impression of equality. If you've got good images that tell a story, it can improve the audience experience, and it can eventually boost engagement as well. You can use images to point out the obvious, and you can also use images to illustrate specific concepts. Now, we use images that are relevant to our business, people pictures, because we provide a service rather than a product. It's important for us as a business to get that message across, but we also work hand in hand with other businesses. So it was important for us to have our hero image as like a discussion image. We chose to use a video. We don't on all of our pages, but on this opening page, our home page, our landing page is the page that gives the impression that we are a service provider, but we work with people. Okay. And that was quite important to us, and we spent a great deal of time looking for this specific image. As we go through all the different areas, you'll see, again, we're using people pictures, and we wanted to evoke the feeling that we are working with people. So this is quite important for us as a business. So why do many businesses fail to find great images or even use great images on their website? I mean, the common answers that I quite often hear as a designer is that I'm not sure how to select appealing images. And I'm going to give you some advice on that as we go through. But the other one is I don't know where to find nice images, or I don't have the budget to send a photographer out to take photographs for me. In this day and age with cameras on phones, you can quite often take your own images if you know how to arrange a specific image, and they're perfectly good quality to use on your website. And the other thing is, people say I can't afford to buy stock images. There is plenty of free resource online if you know where to look. So finding the right images, we talked about InSync and the doing images that we use, but there are some simple steps to follow when you are in searching for these particular images relevant for your business. So always use high quality images. Find unique images and images that have meaning and that are relevant to your business. So as I mentioned, you know, all the images that we use on our website are relevant to us as a business, and they're doing people pictures. And again, people pictures tend to get better engagement. It's not always the case where you can use people images. It's not always appropriate, but for us as a business it is. And for many businesses out there, you can find some kind of people person image, people in your images that you can use. The second thing to think about is always use high quality images. And what I mean by high quality images is really sharp images that are crystal. You know, they've got a very sharp edge to them. There's no fuzziness. And the term that we use is make sure that it's not pixelated. And essentially a pixel is like when you get that jagged edge that you see quite often. I'll demonstrate it shortly, but it's the smallest unit of a digital image or graphic that can be displayed or represented on a digital device. Pixels are combined to form the complete image, so your image is made up of lots of different pixels, and it's what actually shows on your computer screen. So this is a clear image, this is a pixelated image, and I'm sure we've all seen examples of this as you're scrolling through online. Sometimes images just aren't the way that they should be. You know, they should always have a crisp outline to them. And if I demonstrate this, if I can find where I've put it, here we go, behind here. So I've downloaded a vector graphic, which will blow up really crisp. So if you look at the outline on here, you can see it's pin sharp, it's really sharp. But it's quite a small image. So if I want to blow this image up, to, you know, 3 times the size and go into it again, you can see it's still really crisp, sharp. So this is a vector graphic, and it's a file that will allow you to blow. If, however, I take a copy of that image, like a screenshot, which is quite often what people do, let's just fold that one away. So essentially, if I just take a photograph of it on my computer screen and paste it further down, you'll see that it pixelates. And you'll see that that sharp line has now gone. So this now is...
Sam,
sorry.
You've got a question from Andy in the chat.
Okay.
He's saying, when you say high quality, what's the minimum pixel size?
72 dpi. If you're, well, we'll get onto that shortly, because if you, it depends what you're using it for. If it's going onto your website, there's certain ways that you can squish the images down so that they don't slow the site speed, and that's quite important as well. But if you're using an image and printing it, you're getting an actual publication or something printed, you need a higher quality image again. And that's dots per inch, which is something else to pixels. So yeah, I've just finished demonstrating this and I'll go into more detail on that now. But essentially, it's really important that your image is crisp sharp, so that when you do blow it up, you remain to keep that sharp edge on it. I know I've used a graphic here, not a photograph, but it's the same principle with a photograph as well. You just close that down. So talking more about images and how to use them and what dots per inch and pixels per inch. For digital, like I said, if you're putting anything online, it's important that you condense that image down. It still needs to be good quality, so still source a really high quality image, but before you upload it to your website, it's at that point that you condense it so that it squishes it basically into a smaller file size that doesn't slow your website down. And there is something called Tiny PNG that does this for you. So if ever you find a really good quality image, but you want to use it on your website, but it's massive and it's going to slow your website down, pull it into tiny PNG and it will condense it for you. So I'll just demonstrate how this works. If I've got an image of tomato, I literally drag and drop it into that box. It will tell me that it's 1.7 megabytes and it's condensing it now. And it's reduced it by 68%, okay? And all you do then is you download that image and you can use that image wherever you need to do it. Save it to Dropbox, download, and that is the image size that you need to upload to the website. There are plugins that you can have on the back end of your website as well that will condense them further. That might be a conversation for the web developer, but if you've got like a basic WordPress website or Shopify website, there's plenty of plugins out there that will make sure that your images remain quite small on the back end of the website. But the main thing to remember is that you want a high quality image at the outset. That's the most important thing, really. And like I said, dots per inch, if you're printing anything, always go for 300 DPI. But just make sure that it's a very crisp image when you start to work with it.
Sam, we just got another couple of questions in the chat. The previous two programs you were using, are they available to download?
That's a completely free, this tiny PNG is just an online resource. So you just type in tiny PNG, it's completely free to use.
Lovely. And the one before? Yeah.
When you say high quality, what's the minimum pixel size? Is effectographic something which can be, is effectographic? I don't quite understand that question. Is effectographic something which can be downloaded?
Maybe you could unmute yourself, Andy. And
okay. It's the effectographic you were using. Is that something that is downloadable, or is it something that exists on the computer already?
Are you talking about this graphic?
No, the little flowery things you had.
Oh, these things, yes. So these are free. These again are free online. If you're looking for a graphic, is that what you're talking about? You're looking for some kind of graphic to use.
Well,
there's a place so there's
I was just
an
interested
online
in playing, really.
Okay, there's an online resource called VectEasy. Again, it's completely free. And you can search for specific vector graphics here. So if I put in flower, not my internet's slowing down, sorry. If I put in flower, I get all these different vector graphics. If I want a flower pattern, I can do that. If you want photos, you can even find photos on this VectEasy platform as well. And you can see these are all completely free to use.
Blimey.
Okay. We'll get more onto this shortly, but it's very easy. You just select the image that you want. This is a pro one, so you would have to pay for it. So I'm not going to select that one. This one's free. And you just click free download and it will download into your picture box here. Okay, we'll go over this shortly.
Okay, thank you.
No problem at all. So yeah, vector graphics, logos and icons, we'll touch on that shortly. We've talked about tiny PNG. I just want to show you another free online resource where you can actually crop images. So this is something called Image Resizer, and it works much in the same way as the last one. But basically you drag and drop your image. So this is if you want to change the crop of it, you want to change the shape of the image. And then you can go down here, you can put the dimensions in that you want. resize image, and it will crop it to how you want it. So let's just try 300. So let me do it as a percentage, or these are relatively new to me because I use something called Photoshop. So forgive me if I'm bumbling around a little bit in these platforms, but they are very intuitive and quite easy to use. And you just literally drag and drop, change the percentage in here, press crop, and it will change the dimension of that image for you. If you find then that that image is still too big for your website, you can then pull that saved image into tiny PNG and it will condense it for you without losing the quality. Okay, so there are two online resources, Tiny PNG and imageresizer.com. Really valuable if you're adding images yourself to your website. So we've talked about quality images. I now want to talk about unique images. So think about how you want to connect with your audience. What's your unique selling point? Quite often candid shots work really well, and we talked about people images earlier. They sell quite well. And don't be afraid to shoot images yourself with your camera, the camera on your phone, I should say. And again, there's lots of free online resource where you can actually play around with these images and create graphics yourself. So one of them, I'm not sure, I don't know if any of you have used Canva before, but again, this is a completely free online resource, and you just drag and drop your images into here, and there's so many different things that you can do within here. You can create your own logo, you can make little flyers, posters, you can even do your Facebook posts on here and add all your content to it. And it's simply a case of dragging and dropping the image that you want to use into a template that's available on here. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because we'll be here forever, because there's so much on here that you can do. But it's worth just having a look yourself when you've got a bit of time, playing around with it. Really good for social media posts. You know, if you want to dress up an image, or you've got a story to tell, or you've got an offer, and you're not quite sure how to create that graphic, then by all means go into Canva and have a play around in there. There are other ones such as Pixlr. Again, it's all completely free, all online. So just go and find it and have a play. So talking of unique images and candid shots, I've just pulled up this slide to just ask the question really, which of these two images suggest the following, A or B? Which image is friendly, approachable, down to earth and trustworthy? Would you say A or would you say B? Anyone? A, yeah. Yeah, I think you've all got the message there then, haven't you? That a candid shot, a team member, rather than a posed stage shot, always is a little more open, I'd say, and not quite so false. So, you know, if you are featuring any of your team members on your website, or you are telling a story about yourself as a business, you know, it might be worth investing in just some nice candid shots or a nice professionally photographed image of yourself doing something maybe. You know, if you're a florist and you're out picking the flowers, perhaps a little video of you just walking around to upload onto your website. You know, these are all things that work quite well, but that will be unique to you as a business. So yeah, unique images are also quite important. The use of light and angles of which you take your photography, and what works and what doesn't work. I've pulled up some tractor pictures. You'll see as we go through this webinar, it's all tractors and tomatoes, but we'll get to that shortly. Tractors, not the most exciting thing to photograph, but these look okay, don't they? You know, it's in action, it's doing something. The farmer stood alongside his tractor quite proudly. You know, they're all doing something, and at first impressions they look quite, you know, usable, perhaps a little bit dull. But then if you think about the composition and the light and the way that you photograph these images, you can achieve so much more. So these are some images that have been thought about, have been composed slightly differently, and you can see the difference between the two. These look much better, in my view. You know, the angle, you've come down and you're shooting up again to make it look like a big, powerful machine, which it is. You know, beautifully shot with a nice backdrop. Again, the angle down here. This is an old tractor, I've put that in, but again, it's beautifully shot. They've chosen to shoot it at sunset. And again, coming down to find an interesting angle. All things to take into account if you're searching for images and you're looking on those free libraries, but also if you're attempting to take these images yourself. It just makes them look a bit more dramatic and a bit more impressive than these. Okay. So choose images with meaning and relevance. You want images to work for you to your advantage and for your business. You want them to be thought-provoking and you want them to be memorable. Now, we're quite a serious company, but we do like to have a bit of a joke and a laugh as well. And there's not really much to laugh about when you're talking about a service that you're providing somebody. So my boss thought it'd be a great idea to have a bit of fun with the Contact Us page by using an image of, he likes cats. And it's personal to him as a business. You know, he's the business owner. He wanted to use cats on the Contact Us page, and that's what we did. But it's memorable and it's unique to us. And it's, you know, somebody is typing a question to us. You know, it's just a bit of a joke, really, but a memorable one. So think of images that are relevant to your business. When we talk about relevance, I wanted to sort of demonstrate something that works quite well, is out there at the moment, which has always sort of fascinated me, really. The Rubiks Cube, and the way that they've shot their images. I mean, it's just a cube with some colours on it, and how they've sort of marketed themselves with the use of these images. So what do you think of when you think of the Rubiks Cubes? For me, it was like, you know, school clubs. It was a massive craze when I was at school. Everyone wanted to do it. It was hugely frustrating. I even bought one for my granddad and he threw it out the window. He got so frustrated with it. But it was a puzzle. Kids went crazy for it. And it was hugely frustrating. Everyone wanted to beat it. So they've chosen images that represent that. They've chosen to demonstrate the product being used. This image always is quite thought-provoking, I think. It's, you know, somebody sat there and they're trying to work it out. This demonstrates the frustration that he can't do it. And again, this is the concentration that was involved. So for me, I was trying to think of a relevant business and I couldn't think of one for Tyfu Cymru, but this always comes to my mind when I think of a product that's not particularly exciting, but they photographed in such a way that it works really well. And it kind of humanizes the product. It puts the product in a real life situation. It makes it more relatable and it better demonstrates the purpose of the product. So I think, you know, Rubiks Cube have done a really great job with their marketing, their website. Have I got their website up here? Yeah. You know, again, they've got lots of different products. They're trying to make it fun and engaging. And they've demonstrated that by the way that they're using their images. You know, they've brought it into line of putting it on the phone. It's a puzzle that you can carry around with you. Yeah, and you know, they've even got Rubiks Cube ambassadors, and they show different groups of people, different generations actually using it. So yeah, I think Rubiks Cube is a good example of how to shoot a product, I suppose, a pretty dull product, in a more exciting way. Again, choosing images with relevance. Again, for us, I don't want to harp on too much about us, but it's just another example. We run a lot of courses and webinars, rather than just show images of, you know, the course title, we try and show doing pictures. Again, for us, because we're a service provider rather than selling a product, it's important for us to show that there's people and there's engagement. So we demonstrate our courses, you know, with a room full of people and Eddie, our CEO, taking the course rather than just a headshot of Eddie. Although I'm sure he'd like to have just a headshot of himself, but there we go. So choosing images with meaning and relevance. You can use an image to help demonstrate concepts. So something really straightforward is, again, quite a dull product, you know, card payment processing. Actually demonstrate how it works. The picture tells the story, so let it tell the story. Again, you know, a combine harvester in the field doing its job. If you've got the type of business where you can better demonstrate your services or your products with imagery, then do that. Remember your audience. They're ordinary people just like you. I've shown you this example of our page, but yeah, what appeals to you may very well appeal to your target audience. So play around with it. Don't be afraid to play around with it. Now going back to using people images. Images of real people have been proven to increase sales by guiding the user. This was quite an interesting bit of research that was done by a usability specialist called James Breeze, and he carried out like a not heat, it's like heat mapping, but it's an eye tracking study which better demonstrates where the eye goes on each image. So with the baby looking straight out at you and the pile of nappies and the information on the right, everybody's eye is drawn to the baby's face. And this red spot, you know, shows this is where people are actually looking more so than the information on the right. If you reshoot that image and shoot the image of the baby to the looking towards the copy, it will encourage the eye to actually read the edit on the right hand side. So it was a really interesting experiment to carry out. And it proves that if you use an image or photograph an image in such a way to drive the eye, it can prove quite successful in terms of conversions. Obviously, they'll read the edit, they'll buy the product, whereas here they'll just look at the pretty picture of the baby. Again, pointing out the obvious, using your images. If you've got a product and you're really proud of it, as this guy is here, he's literally pointing to the product. By putting your edit to the left of that product, your eye automatically goes that way. So pointing at the product, you read this bit of content here, and your call to actions are placed in a prominent position next to where he's pointing. You're more likely to convert. People pictures, again, going back to John Deere, you know, this is for his job employment page. He's got lots of different people doing lots of different things. Obviously, it's heavily branded, as it should be. But again, you know, it shows the activity going on. And it, you know, it harps back to how it could influence your workforce. Images of people, again, can evoke feelings. I've put the classic ones of the chocolate bar in, you know, who doesn't want to sit down in an evening and eat lots of chocolate? I know I do at the moment, but chocolate evokes lots of feelings. It's typically, you know, historically, you've seen the Galaxy adverts, you've seen the Flake adverts. The Milky Bar kid, he's thrilled to bits to have his Milky Bar, and it clearly is demonstrated in the look in his face. Somebody selling a coat, you know, get your cozy on. She looks cozy, and it demonstrates the product. It says what it is. We're now moving over into the tomato arena, I shall warn you. So yeah, images, again, tomato, nurturing, very delicate, you know, the deliciousness of them, how they're grown. these good people pictures help demonstrate, you know, somebody's keen to get their hands on the burger and pick it up and eat it. So the main thing to remember, I suppose, is just to keep it simple, stupid, or keep it stupid, simple even. Consistency is hugely important when you think about your brand. Ensure your colours, fonts and proportions are all the same across all marketing assets. Consistency breeds recognition. When I talk about fonts, colours and proportions, even your images, the colours that you use in your images, make sure that you've got your strong branding in all of that as well. Your first impression is the best impression that you can make, and you want to leave a memory. So I'm going to switch over now into where you can actually find these images, and I'll show you several different places of where you can go to do this. But first I just want to talk about the pros and cons of free versus paid, and you'll discover this as you start looking for images yourself. Free images are great because they're completely free. There's plenty of online resource for them. There are lots of creative images out there and there's plenty available. The cons are that perhaps they're not always quite so business focused, and it can be difficult to find specific images that you're looking for. Are there any fonts or colours to avoid? Not really. I would just say, you know, go for your brand colours. Fonts and colours, there are certain fonts and colours that you should avoid, but there's another webinar, whole webinar on that I could go into, but it all really depends on how you're using those fonts and colours and in what context. So yeah, that's a whole different arena, but yeah. Perhaps I'll share some information about another webinar. Sourcing images, so yeah, going back to free images, the free images are not always business focused. It might be difficult to actually find a specific image that you're looking for. Paid for images, however, offer great creative images. There's again plenty available online. They tend to be more commercially focused, so they're shot for specific types of businesses, and there's a far wider selection. The con is that it can be very expensive. So finding free images, I'm going to quickly whiz through a couple of places that you can look, and these two places are my go-to places whenever I'm searching for clients, purely because there's plenty of availability on there. So if there's anyone searching for any particular kind of image, pop it in the chat now and we'll have a specific look. The first place I would suggest you look is something called Unsplash. And it's a completely free online resource. You can download images, you can use it on your website, you can use them over social media, you can edit them, you can do all sorts of different things with them. Okay, so nobody's put anything in the chat, so I'm going to search for herbs. And you can see all of these images are completely free. If there's a type of herb maybe that you're looking for, let's have a look for parsley. Again, all these images are free. Okay, and it's just a case of veg boxes. Okay, let's have a look. Spell it correctly. Vegetable. Not so much in the way of vegetable boxes, but lots of different vegetables. What if we just put vegetable in? Then you get your vegetable boxes, or a selection of different types of vegetables. And again, they're all completely free. How do you protect your own images that you have taken from other people to using them? You can watermark them. I mean, really, people shouldn't be pulling your images, and we'll talk about that in Google a bit later, because if you feature them on your website, they will inevitably end up on Google and people can find them there and use them. The larger companies have got whole creative suites that sit and trawl through other people's websites to ensure that they're not using their images, and then they prosecute them. It's probably not something that you're going to do, but just sticking a copyright sign on it or watermarking it would help, is one way that you can do that. Any tips on taking your own food shots? Yes, we'll come to that very shortly. I'm slowing down a little bit, so I will crack on. So yeah, completely free. You just download here. It will download into your box. It asks you to credit. You don't have to credit, but it's polite to. If you feel that you want to, then you can. If not, don't worry. Another one is pixabay.com. Again, if I search for herbs, you get a variety of herbs come up. Again, completely free and downloadable. On this particular one, you can actually search for videos as well, which again are completely free. So these are a selection of videos, and you can see them in use if you just hover over them. Again, you could download them and then embed them into your website, or use them over social media, or however you want to use them. So they're completely free. So Pixabay, very much like Unsplash, we've just done a demonstration. Another one is rawpixel.com. All of these are completely free, and you'll see all the images that I've pulled onto this PowerPoint presentation are all from these free platforms. Paid for images, in my opinion, GettyImages.com are probably the best paid for resource for commercial applications. They've got a great deal of content on there. I'm not going to demo this because it's much the same as what I've demoed here. It's just that there's a bill at the end of it when you come to download. But yeah, great for candid shots, real life situations, very easy to navigate through, can be quite expensive. Shutterstock, again, quite affordable. It's a little bit more affordable. I know we use Shutterstock for some of the images on our website. Photos and graphics, great for businesses who are putting together brochures and websites, really high quality images on there. But again, can be quite expensive. But you just need to find the image that you're looking for, and then it will tell you the price that you need to be paying. Now, if you want to take photographs yourself, going back to the point in the chat box, there's simple things that you need to think about. So think about the angles of which that you're taking the photographs. Try and remove as much clutter from the background as possible. Think if you're photographing food or particular products, think of yourself like a food stylist, and style your images. You know, if you've got an ice cream, and you know, think about having the ice cream dripping down your hand, or cut up the vegetables and open them up so that it look more interesting on the inside, and have a good selection, that kind of thing. Narrow the depth of field, so have something key in the photograph in the foreground that is really crisp and sharp, but then have it sort of fading out in the background. I'll show you some examples of this now shortly. Experiment with light. Put your product or whatever it is that you're photographing in the window for soft light. If you want to have it lit heavily, get some lamps and light it, but be careful of yellow lighting. Think about background colour as well, complementary colours, and I'll quickly whiz through that, and then get creative. Just play around with some photography. If you are shooting products for an e-commerce website, the one thing I would say is ensure that you photograph every product in exactly the same way. Very similar to what we discussed with this website. Photograph everything exactly the same way and format so that it looks consistent on your website. So DIY photography, add some human elements, you know, just gives a bit more interest. You know, if you've got tomatoes, this is where we go into tomatoes now. We've gone from tractors to tomatoes. So yeah, just add some human interest into some of your images. This is the depth of field that I was discussing. So focus on one thing in the image and have everything sort of blurred around in the background. And again, there's settings on your phone that will do this for you, or if you're a bit of a photographer, your camera will do it as well. Again, you know, its shot is focusing on this tomato here and it fades out into the background. Again, this tomato and the background is blurred. And then, of course, a really fresh tomato here sat on top of some blurred out ones at the background. So that's your depth of field. Experiment with the angle of your photography. So are you shooting directly down? Are you shooting at eye level? Are you shooting at an angle? You know, are you cropping your image so that you don't see any background? Lots of different ways that you can actually shoot a tomato, as clearly demonstrated here. The use of colour. Think about the background colour and the contrasting colours. And there's a really interesting thing that you can look at to help you with this. And it's called the colour wheel. Wheel, not well. And you can pull up any one of these and it will tell you what the complementary colour is. So complementary to orange is blue, complementary to green is red, and you'll see that they've used that theory in here. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly opposite, but very strong contrasting colours are usually opposite sides of the colour wheel. So just Google colour wheel and select images and it'll give you a guide here, which you can just use as reference really when you're thinking about composing your images. But it works really well. It makes the image really vibrant and makes the image pop. Think like a food stylist. This is what I meant. You know, cut up your vegetables, or do something a bit more interesting, place it underwater, experiment. You know, if you've got a piece of food, you know, have somebody lifting a slice of pizza out, you know, if that's relevant to your business. But yeah, you can do a lot rather than just taking a straight photograph of a tomato. You know, this is far more interesting, I think. Remove clutter. As I said, you know, remove all background clutter, make it really clean, focus on the actual product itself. You know, again, you know, if you're just taking a detail of it, arrange it in a slightly different way, put them all in a glass or in a bowl. You know, if you've got any sort of foodie shots or end product shots, or, you know, what you can do with tomatoes here, for example, tomato soup, get rid of all the background clutter so your eye is drawn to the actual product itself. And get creative. Don't be afraid to play around with different things. Spray your fruit and veg with water, make it look really tasty. Put it on an interesting piece of wood, stack them in boxes and photograph them and crop them in an interesting way. Do something really unusual and try and hide the tomato on the same colour background. I thought that was quite an interesting one. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but it was interesting. Yeah, and cut them open and play around with them. Just get creative and play around and see what you can do yourself. In terms of copyright, I'll quickly whiz through all this. Copyright refers to the legal right of the owner of intellectual property. So basically, it protects you as the person who's taken the photograph. It's the legal right that protects the use of a piece of work that has been published. A set of rules on how the piece of work can be used and protects the rights of the owner. It lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. So this is the reason why you should not find images on Google and just copy and paste them, because they are copyrighted to somebody else. And most people know this and wouldn't do it, but occasionally you'll find people that do. So do not take images from the web unless they're from one of these free online resources. Do not go to Google and put in herbs and find these images. And for example, you know, that's a really nice image. I want that. I'll take a photograph of that. I'll screenshot it and paste that into your website. That you must not do that. Don't scan images from magazines or take screenshots of images and reuse them. Copyright still resides with the author of that work. Don't download images from Google. Copyright or license infringement is really serious, and you will get into lots of trouble for doing that. You could find yourself in a serious legal battle with the big players of stock images. And like I said, you know, these big companies do have departments who actively look for their images on the web. And when they find them, they will issue a really nasty letter demanding that you remove it, and then they will charge you for the length of time that that image has been used online. And you have that obligation to pay for that image once you've used it. So do not take anything from the web unless it's from an online free resource. Royalty-free images are typically images that require a one-time fee for their use. You are not given the photo to be yours exclusively. So if you are using a paid-for image stock library and you download the image, you can't then print that image on a canvas and sell it and make money out of it. You can only use it for the purpose that you've downloaded it for. I did mention that you shouldn't download anything from Google. There is an exception to the rule, and I'm probably going to muddy the waters now by showing you this, but I would still recommend that you don't do it. But I don't want you to leave today and somebody to say, yes, you can, you are allowed to do it. There are exceptions to the rule, and I'll show you very briefly what that exception to the rule is, but I wouldn't recommend it. So you found an image online that you want to use. If you go to Tools, Usage Rights, there's something called Creative Commons license. If you click on that, these images you have permission to use. However, there is a caveat to that. You can use them, but you have to credit them. If you don't credit them, that's when you're infringing. So when I say credit, this is the kind of information that you need to put with the image that you choose. So 9 times out of 10, it's not really worth it. You don't want a website full of other people's images with lots of different photo credits on it. I'd go back to these free resources where there's plenty of availability. So we're 2 minutes away. I will just quickly round up. To seriously avoid infringement, my advice would be stick to the stock libraries. Try taking some images yourself. You know, it's not difficult if you have a think. These slides will be available at the end of the webinar as well. So just have a think about, you know, the arrangement of your images and how you might go about taking them. Use the free online resource Images to crop your images and upload them to the website. And I think we've just about covered everything. There is plenty of opportunities to get it wrong. I would say just stick to the free online resource. I hope you found that information useful. If you have got any questions, please do pop them in the chat.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Superb timing as well. 1 minute to go. So, thank you. That was excellent.
Sorry, I did speed up a little bit at the end, but
we'll just give everybody a chance to ask a final question if you wanted to. Auntie's asking, how do you copyright and watermark, Sam?
Okay, so you would probably have to use a piece of software. You may be able to do it in Canva, pull in your image and write some type over it and fade it out, and then save that image. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I use a piece of software called Photoshop, which I appreciate isn't available to everybody, but if you have a series of images that you want to watermark, you know, you could just send them to a designer and they'll work them out for you.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions. We'll just give you a minute or so to ask any others, but feel free to unmute yourselves and ask the question yourself of Sam. You'll see in the chat box that we've put in the link to the evaluation survey. It's only a quick one, but it really helps us with planning future delivery. So please, if you've got time, click on that link and go through that short survey.